Welcome to the very first episode of Gunning for the Truth, where we dive in head first into the conspiracies that they swore were crazy till they weren't. I'm Cody, your host, and today we're starting with one of the darkest intersections of crime, culture, and government operations. The question, was Charles Manson an MK Ultra experiment? What if I told you Charles Manson wasn't just a madman with a god complex, but a pawn in a covert government operation designed to control the human mind? LSD, hypnosis, a secret clinic in San Francisco, a CIA operation so insane, it makes conspiracy sound like an understatement. This is the dark link between Manson, MK Ultra, and Jolly West. Inspired by the incredible book Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s by Tom O'Neill.
Are we alone in the universe?
I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Biggest lie, it would have to be the fucking U.S. government, actually.
And also, then we forgot about Monica Lewinsky.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
In spite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions.
I think there's gonna be a lot of weird shit that happens within our lifetime and within our generation.
It's a great brainwashing process.
And we forgot about the president was shooting bombs overseas, yet I'm a bad guy.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to ramp out of control.
You have 3 days to get out of where you are because that's when they're coming for you.
After the Korean War, American POWs came home acting strange. They were spouting communist slogans, emotionally dead, believing that America was a lie and that communism was the way. The CIA had a major problem with this, and so did a lot of the United States. The US government called it brainwashing. The CIA called it a problem to be solved. Thus, to be born was MK Ultra, a top secret program to crack the code of the mind. The US government wanted to have control, and they were going to figure out how. From 1953 to 1963, this is the official date, Sidney Gottlieb, I believe is how you pronounce his name, ran unthinkable experiments: LSD, electroshock therapy, and hypnosis on not just anyone, but wards of the state, prisoners, Johns, mental patients, runaway teenagers, anyone that society judged as less than desirable. Of course, the victims were fully unaware that they were getting processed by this government experiment. Gottlieb literally bought the world supply of LSD for $240,000 US. If you dropped acid in the 60s, there's a good chance this guy is the reason why. Dr. Lewis Jolly West was one of America's leading psychological experts. And due to his time working on the Korean POWs, the CIA took interest in him almost immediately. Just 2 months after MK Ultra project started, Jolly West proposed hypnosis and LSD to control one's mind and rewrite the behavior that they had. And like I said, the CIA gained interest in him after they learned how he was deprogramming these Korean POWs. But this is where his career got really weird with the CIA. Jolly ends up in San Francisco, where they set up the Haight-Ashbury Clinic. And if you don't know, at the time of the 60s, the Haight-Ashbury suburb is a giant movement of the 60s anti-war and just counterculture. So they opened this clinic, and it was basically an apartment. But what looked as a hippie hangout was what Jolly West called, and I quote, a laboratory disguised as a hippie crash pad. And I know what you're thinking. This guy's giving out drugs. Of course, people are going to show up there. Sure. This is where it gets really wild, though. In 1967, Charles Manson is released from Terminal Island, a federal facility. He immediately violates parole by going to San Francisco. But not only is he not thrown back in jail, he becomes a fixture in the community. There's women flocking to him. He's got a group of other followers who are musicians, and they all keep hanging around him. They're blindly loyal. They're selling themselves for him, so that they can get money. But not only that, where did they find themselves? At the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, which again is where Jolly West had set up his operations. But it gets even weirder than that. I can't recall the details, but Manson gets a parole officer in San Francisco. The San Francisco parole officer's name is Roger Smith. Roger Smith tells him he has to report to see his parole officer once a week. Where is the parole officer located? At the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. That is so weird. Like, the connection there just makes no sense. Like, how do you wrap your head around that and tell me anything other than, like, this was set up for him to do this, During that time that Roger Smith is his parole officer, Manson is arrested 6 times. Any one of those times could have potentially prevented the Sharon Tate and LaBianca family murders from happening. But instead of revoking parole, what did Roger Smith do? Well, he sent a letter to the parole board saying that Manson was doing better than expected. Can you say weird? 6 arrests and no consequences? There's even multiple reports throughout his life where law enforcement could have done something, but did not step in because somebody higher told them not to. This is including his stay in San Francisco. This is his stay as a young boy in these boy reformatories. Manson spends, I think, 13 to 14 years of his life outside of an institution. But even after those murders happen, the law enforcement say there's no connection with Tate and LaBianca murders, right? Even though the LaBianca murders have defiling of a body, where Mr. LaBianca was carved, I believe, war into his body, and then we know that Helter Skelter I think she misspelled it, but was written on the fridge. We know that there were stabbings in both murders. We know that Pigs was written in blood, and there's a lot of correlation between these murders, but they were still remained free for weeks after this happened. And even when they initially got picked up, it was not for the murders. It was for weapon-related charges. After Manson goes to prison, he says a lot of kooky stuff, which you could say that, he's a hippie, he's been on LSD, but there's some weird anti-government stuff that he talks about as well, which we can kind of look at and find that, like, very interesting and kind of all connected. But this is what I think gets really suspicious, and this is ultimately what started the idea of this video. The Haight-Ashbury Clinic opens in 1967. It closes 1 month after Tom O'Neill's book releases. The book releases in June of 2019, and the Haight-Ashbury Clinic closes in July of 2019. Coincidence? This story has so many layers, though. I just feel like saying it's a coincidence. It just doesn't line up. What do you think about that? Was Charles Manson just some God-complexed con man who had a lot of luck to get slapped on the wrist for multiple crazy amount of charges, to end up in the same place that Jolly West was doing these experiments, to get a slew of people to follow him, both women and men, to do his bidding? Or was he part of something much deeper? Whether he was a tool knowingly or unknowingly, was he a CIA patsy? A pawn for the 60s dark psychological takedown the anti-war movement? Because if so, it worked. The Manson murders completely destroyed the peace and love movement. The media pivoted, hippies became cult members, the anti-war movement lost momentum, which just so happened to be another plan of the CIA and an operation called Operation Chaos. But that's a story for another time. Subscribe, like, and comment if you want a part 2, because next time we're diving right into Operation Chaos and how the CIA tried to dismantle the anti-war movement from inside.